What would it be like to live in a world where wages simply do not exist, where the value of work is not measured in currencies, but in shared harvests, seasons, and obligations? In this video, we will follow a typical day in the life of a peasant from medieval Europe. It is a historical reconstruction based on academic records and studies about the period between the 11th and 14th centuries. We are not talking about a specific person, but of a common way of life in many rural regions of medieval Europe, where work, time, and survival followed very different logics from today's. In many regions of medieval Europe, most of the population lived in the countryside, organized in small rural villages. In general, these settlements revolved around agricultural land, which was the main source of livelihood and wealth. Historical records indicate that peasants formed the basis of the medieval economy, producing food not only for themselves but also to support local lords, religious institutions, and urban centers. The land was not, in most cases, the property of the peasant. It belonged to a lay or ecclesiastical lord, and the peasant had the right to use it in exchange for labor and obligations. This system varied from region to region, but the general logic was similar. Working the land guaranteed housing, protection, and means of survival. Money existed in medieval Europe, but its use in rural life was limited. In agricultural villages, direct exchanges, labor obligations, and production for own consumption were much more important than currencies. The role of the peasant, therefore, was not linked to a paid job, but to a set of traditional duties and social agreements established over generations. Life was deeply influenced by the natural rhythm. The seasons of the year determined the type of work, the intensity of tasks, and even the moments of rest. Time was not something abstract or timed, but perceived through daylight, climate, and the agricultural cycle. It is within this context that begins the day of our peasant. But how did this system translate into practice when the day really began? The day begins at dawn. In many parts of medieval Europe, awakening was guided by natural sunlight, not mechanical clocks, which were rare in rural life. Records indicate that work began early, especially during the planting and harvesting seasons when each hour of light was valuable. Upon waking up, the peasant stands in a simple house, usually built with wood, clay, and straw. The space is shared with the family and sometimes with animals, especially during winter. The organization of the house reflects a practical life, focused on immediate needs. Before going to the field, small tasks are performed. Feed the animals, check tools, prepare something simple to eat. The routine is repetitive, but not random. The smell of the wet earth, the sound of tools, and the silence interrupted by the wind were a constant part of this daily life. This routine was learned from childhood, passed down through generations. Agricultural knowledge does not come from books, but from observing the land, the climate, and the collective experience of the community. The pace of the day changes with the season. In summer, work starts earlier and ends later. In winter, the hours of daylight are few, and activities focus on maintenance, repairs, and basic care. The absence of a fixed schedule does not mean disorganization, but a constant adaptation to the natural environment. Thus, the dawn does not only mark the beginning of work, but the alignment of the peasant with the cycle of nature, which organizes his whole life. Work takes up most of the day. In many regions of medieval Europe, agricultural activities included plowing the land, sowing seeds, caring for crops, and, at the right time, harvesting. These tasks were rarely lonely. Family and community work was common, especially at times that required more effort, such as harvesting. It is important to understand that there was no salary. The peasant did not receive cash payment for his daily work. Historical records indicate that agricultural production guaranteed, first of all, the subsistence of the family. Part of what was produced was for own consumption, while another part served to fulfill obligations with the lord of the land or with the local church. The diet reflected this logic. The diet was simple and relatively stable. Bread made of cereals such as rye or barley was common, as well as soups and broths prepared with vegetables. Consumption of animal protein existed, but occasionally, usually on specific dates or when resources allowed. It is not about portraying a life of abundance, but also not of constant hunger. In general, feeding varied according to region, climate, and harvest success. The important thing is to understand that the work was directly linked to survival, without the mediation of a regular monetary payment. And when the work is finished, what was left of that time? The life of the peasant was not reduced to agricultural work. The church occupied a central role, both spiritual and social. In many villages, it was the main meeting point of the community. Religious festivals, seasonal celebrations, and holy days marked important breaks in the work routine. Historical records indicate that the religious calendar helped organize the year. Certain days were reserved for rest, community gatherings, and rituals. These moments reinforced social ties and offered a sense of continuity and belonging. As the sun begins to set, the work in the field comes to an end. Dusk naturally marks the end of activities. Without efficient artificial lighting, the night was a time of rest. Indoors, small tasks could be done in the light of fire, such as repairing tools or preparing simple food. The organization of the day followed the natural cycle: sunrise, work, sunset, rest. There was no rigid separation between work time and personal time as we understand today. Life was integrated, continuous, shaped by the land and the community. Living without salary, in the medieval context, did not mean lack of value or organization. It meant a different way of structuring economic life. The peasant did not receive money regularly, but he had access to land, housing, and means of producing his own livelihood. The relationship between work and survival was direct, without the constant mediation of money. The modern concept of wage, as a fixed payment for working time, simply did not apply in that historical context. In general, the value was in production, compliance with obligations, and maintenance of community balance. This way of life was different, not inferior. Time was perceived differently. Work had another meaning. The value was not accumulated in coins, but expressed in harvest, family continuity, and community stability. By observing this daily life, we are invited to reflect. How would our relationship with work be if money was not the center of life? Perhaps the question is not how they lived without pay, but how we live without realizing time. If this trip to the past made you see work, time, and value in another way, do not let this reflection end here. Enjoy this video so that more people have contact with this forgotten story. Subscribe to the channel to continue exploring how societies of the past lived, worked, and organized life long before modern rules that today seem inevitable. And now, leave the comments. Could you live in a world where time was not controlled by clocks and value was not measured by wages? Your answer can say much more about the present than it does about the past.